In this video we finally get some footage of a bird we've been attempting to most of the year. We go looking for a rare American wader and we get closer and closer to completing our target. Welcome back folks, this video starts where the last one ended. On the way back from our Scotland trip, we nipped into Leighton Moss in North Lancashire, near Morecambe. Hey folks, we're at Leighton Moss on the search for another bird for our year list. Hobby, yeah. I'm really hoping to hear. People have seen them most days this week, although they will be migrating soon. So we're going to try and have a little mooch around. Stick with us. We headed on the path towards one of the hides where the hobbies had been seen the previous day. I nearly stood on this fellow before noticing this lovely coal tit in the tree. On the path towards the hide there's an opening in the reed bed, and here they put out grit trays for bearded tits who often come to them later on in the year. Today we only saw this sedge warbler in the reeds, and in some nearby trees this lovely marsh tit. We soon came to the first hide and looked out on the scene in front of us. This hide looks over quite a large pool, and it's on this pool there had been sightings of hobby on previous days. Although no obvious views of any birds of prey, there were plenty of other birds. On the posts in front of us there were gulls perching, like this common gull, and on the island in the middle of the pool there was a large amount of black-headed gulls roosting and preening. Joining the gulls there were some ducks and also some cormorants that were going fishing and then drying off on the island. Some of the fishing cormorants were fighting over what appeared to be an eel. After quite a commotion, one of the cormorants managed to break loose and tried to swallow the eel, eventually after a short struggle succeeding. In this video you can see the eel moving as the cormorant attempts to swallow it. That serious meal should keep that cormorant going for a while. At this point we wandered over to the next hide, where there was some more ducks, including this widgeon. Although the widgeon appeared to be molting into its eclipse plumage, these wonderful gadwall weren't yet, giving great views really close in their wonderful, almost breeding plumage. As we were about to leave the hide, this lovely great white egret flew in on the opposite side next to the reed bed. We now wandered to the tower, which is a platform overlooking some of the pools. Myself and Olivia walked up the few flights of steps to the top platform to get a wonderful bird's eye view of the reserve. Kaylee, who isn't really into heights, decided against it. By this point we still hadn't seen a hobby, so we headed down the path towards another hide where there'd been hobby sightings on previous days. We were greeted by a cormorant sitting on the top of a camera. In the middle of the small pool there was a family of mute swans. While scanning the reed bed, we did notice this grey heron that seemed to have caught itself a particularly large lunch. This appeared to be a pike. The heron just held it in its beak for a while, probably wondering how on earth it was going to swallow it. Eventually, it turned the fish round and then wandered into the reed bed out of sight. I'm not sure if it managed to swallow it. If it did, it probably won't need to eat again for a while. Although all these birds were filling their stomach, we were really hungry, so we headed to the cafe where Kaylee and Olivia had a baked potato and I had a lovely bowl of soup. At this point we had to call it a day. On the way out, seeing this lovely great white egret and little egret flying together. This is a great illustration of their size difference. Unfortunately though, we still hadn't found the hobby we wanted to see, although we'd kind of worked out a reason why. Hey folks, unfortunately I think it was down to the weather. With there being no dragonflies about, there were no hobbies either. Nevertheless, we saw a few other cool things. We saw a grey heron eating a ridiculously big pike, and a cormorant eating a ridiculously big eel. And we had a nice lunch as well. A few days later, we took a trip not too far away from home to Big Pool Wood. Hey folks, we're at Big Pool Wood near Gronant in North Wales. It's somewhere I've not been before, and we've come in the hope of finally getting some footage of a kingfisher.
Let's hope.
Let's hope. For any of you who've watched our videos this year, you'll know that we're doing a big year, but one of our rules is we have to get footage of the birds to count them. And kingfisher, although we've seen a few, we haven't managed to get photographs or videos, which has been deeply frustrating. We were hoping here that our luck would change. This is a really small reserve with a footpath that takes you through some woodland that surrounds a pool. There were a couple of hides and we stopped off at one where there was this lovely blue tit and in the pool a mallard, but still no kingfisher. Although one of the birders in this hide said they had seen it and it had flown towards the other hide, so we hot-footed it past this field of geese to that hide. When we arrived, there were some obvious species in front of us like the young moorhens and also some young wood pigeons that were jumping around in the trees at the back of the pool. Very soon though, I noticed something else in the trees at the back of the pool, which wasn't a wood pigeon. It was smaller and a lot more colourful. We'd finally managed to get our kingfisher. This species isn't particularly rare in Britain, but it's sometimes hard to find. Some of this being down to the fact that they're pretty shy and very easily spooked. Most sightings of kingfishers are usually in flight, where all you see is a little flash of blue whizzing past. This particular individual was at quite a distance, so didn't seem bothered by us. It sat on the tree looking up and down, eventually beginning to preen for a while. Before long, something seemed to catch its attention, but then it flew off. Luckily for us, it flew to somewhere that was more out in the open, so we could get some great views as it perched on an almost vertical branch. It stayed there for a while and then flew on to the branch of an overhanging tree. This was lovely to finally get this footage so we could tick it off of our year list. That leaves us with only 3 more bird species to see to hit our target. Success!
We got it!
Finally. It only took us most of the year, but we finally got some footage of a kingfisher.
It's not like we haven't seen it many times.
We've seen them about 4 times, but just haven't got the footage, so we can now finally count it on our list. A few days later, on a very, very wet day. Hey folks, you can see the girls behind. We're at RSPB Marshside in the rain. We've come today to try and find a very rare little American wader called a Wilson's phalarope. Let's hope the rain hasn't put it off. Let's go and try and find it. The reports had said that the Wilson's phalarope was showing really well on a pool just opposite the car park. So we parked up, crossed the road and headed to this little pool that was behind the screen. It couldn't be that easy, could it? It was. There were a couple of other birders there. He pointed the phalarope out to us, which was surprisingly close to the near bank. This little wading bird was paddling about busily in the shallow water feeding. This species is from across the Atlantic in America and is pretty rare in the UK with 1 or 2 annual records. This is a species we've only seen once before, and that was at Burtonmere Wetlands on the Wirral. Coincidentally, that bird was also pretty confiding and came quite close. We stood in the rain and watched this lovely bird feeding for quite a while. We couldn't really believe our luck at how easy this bird was to find. Oh yes, and that leaves us only 2 birds to find to hit our target. Hey folks, that was easy. We parked up, crossed the road, and there was like a screen. We looked in front of us and the Wilson's phalarope was happily feeding in front of the screen.
Is that easier?
Really close. Probably one of the easiest twitches we've had in a while. So in order not to waste our time, we're going to go for a bit of a wander, see if there's anything else about. Come with us. We took a walk to the hide, which looked over quite a large bit of wetland and farmland too. On the water there was plenty of geese and also many gulls. This group of gulls comprised of many species, including herring gull, black-headed gull, common gull, and also the world's biggest gull, the greater black-backed. There were plenty of ducks present. Pretty much all of them were in eclipse, including this teal that was dabbling about in the mud. When we'd arrived at the hide, another birder had mentioned they'd seen a hobby flying around, although they'd lost it. Another guy said he'd seen a merlin landing on one of the posts in the distance. Either of these would be good to add to our year list, so we stuck around for a while to scan the scene in front of us, hoping for one of these birds of prey. Eventually, one of the other birders picked out this, which he thought was a merlin, but looking at it, I don't know. It does look a little bit too big. Could it be a hobby? Some other people said it looks like one. Otherwise, could it be a young peregrine falcon? If you guys can identify it, feel free to comment, as we'd love to add another bird to our year list. Whilst we were there, we did bump into another friendly birder who was one of our subscribers, and he was also called Nigel. We had a nice chat and he gave us some heads up on some other species that we might try and find later in the year. We continued to scan the area, seeing this lovely common sandpiper that was spooked by a wagtail, and at one point a kingfisher flew right across in front of us. Again, as normal, no footage. Unfortunately though, the weather wasn't getting any better, so we thought it was probably time to leave. I went back to the screen to have another look for the Wilson's phalarope, but this time couldn't find it, and had to make do with this pair of gadwall that were dabbling in the water. Despite the weather, it was well worth us going to get great views of this lovely American wader. Thanks so much for watching. Please like, please subscribe, and please press the notification bell. We'll see you next time.